Përshëndetje të nderuar shikues, do të jemi bashkë në këtë intervistë speciale sonte në këtë emision me Ministrën për Klimë dhe Evropë në qeverinë e Gjermanisë, zonjën Anna Lührmann. Welcome to Channel 10, Ms. Lührmann.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for talking to us. We'll start by the purpose of your visit here. I know you're here for the summit that President Osman is organizing, but you have other activities that you're going to engage. And I want to talk about what can Kosovo do about the climate change. And what's Germany's help?
Yeah, indeed. So I'm here, first of all, for a very important conference on women in peace and security, because it's very clear that if we want to have a peaceful world, that this means a world where both women and men live in peace, where we look at the perspectives of women. We know that women are differently affected from war, and also we know that women can take a very good active role also in peace building and peacemaking. That's what we're here to talk about. That's one part, and the other part indeed is we are talking a lot about the green agenda for the Western Balkans, and we have it as a top priority now as German government to engage in climate activities in our foreign policy. That means we help countries both reduce their carbon emissions but also adjust to the climate change that is inevitable.
And what is Kosovo doing about that? And what has been Germany's role and what it will be in the future to help Kosovo?
Well, first of all, the transition to renewable energies is really important, because renewable energies is the technology that helps us to have a clean energy supply, a cheap energy supply that is sustainable for the future, that also reduces air pollution. I know that here in Pristina there's a big problem with air pollution, and this is something that can be brought down with renewables. We have a lot of German investments in this area, where there's a wind park. I will look at a solar panel factory also. So this is also a technology that creates jobs also and future for people, for young people to stay here and to be active here in society.
Now the Berlin Process Summit is well alive and kicking. Just this week, a milestone, three very important agreements, including the movement of people, especially between Kosovo and Bosnia, without the visas. It's a huge milestone.
Yes, I'm very happy that this milestone was indeed achieved yesterday at the Foreign Ministers meeting. And so when we came into office as new German government in December, we really said the Western Balkans is a top priority for us. We appointed a special envoy, and then we set out to reinvigorate this Berlin process. And now an important interim step has been achieved with three really important agreements. One that indeed allows for the visa-free travel between Kosovo and Bosnia. Another one that also will help in the recognition of university diplomas, and then a third one that helps in the recognition of professional diplomas. So this is all one very important building stone to achieve a common regional market, which is good for the people in the region and which will also help the integration into the European Union.
This was also interpreted as making open Balkans unnecessary, the initiative by Serbia, Albania and North Macedonia, because Kosovo, as you know, doesn't want to join.
Well, it's indeed it's a very good step to achieve a common regional market under the agreed framework that was agreed on 2 years ago in Sofia, but that was never implemented. So really it's very important that regional cooperation is in an inclusive way that includes all 6 countries of the Western Balkans, and that's what we came here to support and to foster.
So, but you're trying to push the Berlin process. It's much more important because all the countries are treated equally there.
Indeed, that's one of the reasons why we're supporting this process, because all countries are included in it, and it is also aligned towards integration in the European Union. And I think that's the clear perspective, to integrate the Western Balkan countries as fast as possible into the European Union.
But the big meeting is going to happen on 4th of November, right?
It's 3rd of November, exactly, yes.
And Prime Minister Kurti of Kosovo, President Vučić of Serbia are going to be there, and will meet the Chancellor Scholz. What to expect for Balkan countries from that summit?
Well, I hope that we make further steps for the common regional market. That's important. And one important step was agreed on yesterday. The formal signing of documents will happen on 3rd of November. So that's one, and additional steps for the common regional market. Secondly, this will be a summit that will talk a lot about energy security as well, because we're all getting ready to get through this very tough winter now. And for me, it's very important that everything that we agree on as European Union to help each other, to be in solidarity with each other during this tough winter, that also the countries of the Western Balkan have access to that. We already have the agreement that we have a joint purchasing platform for gas, that also Western Balkan countries will be included in that. And there will be additional measures as well here. And thirdly, we will talk about the green agenda for the Western Balkans. That includes the issue of renewable energies, as I said before, but also other important issues such as waste management and others to really help also a transition to a cleaner and a green future here.
But it's going to be a high-level meeting, so obviously we're expected for the dialogue to come up and for a possible agreement, not to be signed, obviously, but to be talked about. What's Germany's stance? Are you taking the lead in this dialogue process between Kosovo and Serbia?
Well, the dialogue process, currently the lead has Mr. Lajčák from the European Union, and he has our full support. And I think it's very important that both sides engage very constructively in this dialogue process. We have seen some progresses in some issues, some other issues still need to be discussed, but I think that's exactly the way forward, because he has the mandate of the whole European Union, of the Quint and everyone.
And your request is, together with other countries, for Kosovo government to postpone the license plates deadline for another 10 months?
Well, first of all, we fully understand the Kosovo's government position here, that the old license plates need to go. But this is also a very complicated administrative process, and it needs to be done in a way that doesn't fuel tensions, but that helps to overcome this issue. So I think we might need some more time. And I can just tell you, I'm a member of the Green Party in Germany, and we just agreed. I mean, we had for us it was a very important political victory that by the end of this year we would phase out of nuclear power. But now, because of new circumstances, we have agreed to postpone this until spring. So I think sometimes in politics, when circumstances change and when you see the situation is not ripe yet, then you need to postpone things a bit. But the political commitment is clear. This issue needs to be solved, and of course, old license plates need to go. But this needs to happen in a way that doesn't fuel tensions.
Are you hopeful the Kosovo government will postpone the deadline?
Well, that is their decision, of course, but I will certainly, in my conversations here now, I will certainly underline that I think it would be a wise thing to do.
Then, now, we had in the last days a so-called German draft of the Association of Municipalities, of Serbian municipalities. I don't know why it's called German. I think because German experts drafted, but it was like seen as something that comes from the German government. Is it something you authorize?
Yeah, it's exactly as you hinted at. This was a draft done by under the supervision of a German association, the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, and they've worked with independent experts on this. So it's not a draft in any way authorized by the German government. But we always think it's good if members of civil society, if experts engage in this issue, because at some point also it would be good to come to an agreement also about a status for these Serbian municipality associations.
But this one was rejected by Kosovo government because it seems to be quite old, and it seems to be kind of the original that was agreed in 2013, which gives executive competences to the Serbian municipality, which Kosovo government says is a no-go.
Yeah, no, and I understand that, and to me it also seems seems a bit problematic to give full executive competences here. Nevertheless, I think it's important to engage with these municipalities and to find some way how they can organize and express their points of views in a way that is also being heard.
But then there's a Franco-German big proposal that was also talked much about the last weeks. It has elements of the final agreement which are talked with both countries about Kosovo joining UN without Serbia recognizing it. Is it a plan of German government together with French presidency?
Well, there has been a visit a very high-level visit of the German foreign policy advisor to the Chancellor and his French counterpart, and I think it's very good that we work together also with the French government on this issue. We have been doing that quite a lot. Also, I can tell you that I work very much with my French counterpart, so the Minister for Europe there, also on the issue of Western Balkans, and I raise the issue also of visa liberalization, for example, many times with our French friends. So I think it's good that both of them engage, and that's hopefully a process that can also bring us forward.
But is this the idea of Kosovo joining UN and having the recognition of 5 non-recognizers from EU without the recognition of Serbia?
Well, I think it's not the right time to discuss any specific ideas here. They have engaged, they came, and I think that's the important sign that also Kosovo and the whole Western Balkan region is very high on the priority list for Germany and for France as well.
Do you have any? I guess you don't want to talk about elements, even though the American envoy actually recognize that there is such a plan from Germany and France, that you are the leaders of that plan. But is there any time frame, Ms. Lührmann, of how long will you wait for Kosovo and Serbia to have this agreement? Are you pushing for? There was a mention of a deadline of 24th of February next year, when it's the first anniversary of the Ukraine war.
Well, we're currently focusing a lot on preparing for the Berlin Process Summit on 3rd November, and that is really important that we achieve important agreements here. We also need to make sure that by this deadline, 31st December, tensions don't escalate here. So I think that's the more immediate issue, and we're working very hard in Brussels to get the issue of Kosovo visa liberalization through the respective council working group.
I'm absolutely going to ask you about the visa liberalization, because they are so important for every citizen here in Kosovo. But just a time frame of the final agreement. Is it going to happen next year? The final agreement between Kosovo and Serbia?
Well, also within the normalization dialogue that is run by Mr. Lajcak, there are several steps that need to be done, and I always think that progress here is long overdue.
Okay. What about the Kosovo-Serbia approach to the war in Ukraine? As you know, Kosovo has aligned fully with the EU, has sanctions against Russia, but Serbia doesn't.
Yeah, it's indeed problematic that Serbia moves away from the European Union's foreign policy. Its alignment with EU foreign policy has dropped down to, I believe it was mentioned as 4% in the recent assessment by the European Commission, and it's very important that countries that wish to join the European Union are also aligned with our foreign policy goals.
And Kosovo has been very supportive. Is it something that tells you? Is it something you welcome about Kosovo fully aligning with the EU about Ukraine, even though Ukraine doesn't recognize Kosovo?
Yeah, indeed, we recognize this very constructive position of the government of Kosovo that is in line with the EU goals, and also in line with what every government in the world, I think, should be doing to condemn this Russian war of aggression and really stand with Ukraine.
Now, the visa liberalization, there was much hope this month actually, about the meeting. It was the first time it was brought to the European Council. There's a new meeting in November. What can you tell to Kosovo citizens that have been waiting for more than 10 years for the liberalization?
Well, first of all, that I really understand your impatience and also your frustration. This is long overdue. The technical requirements have been fulfilled, and I can tell you that we're on your side here and are really trying to move this issue forward as fast as we can.
Is there any chance of some good news this year?
Well, I'm always optimistic, and I really hope that it will be possible, but I'm not a type of politician that wants to make promises that I can't keep, because this depends on the position of other governments. So we're working very hard on it.
And you said you're working with France as well, because it seems like France is the last country to kind of have more requests about Kosovo joining.
Well, I think there are also 2 or 3 others, but it's really the discussions revolve now about sort of a technical system for sort of how visas are administered, and it's very clear that once the system is in place, which is planned for us at some point next year, it might also be delayed again, that of course once it's in place, everyone needs to adapt to it.
Other countries as well who have now the visa-free regime, right?
Yes, but I think this is not something that should be connected to this process of visa liberalization for Kosovo in any way.
So there should be no new conditions, let's say, for Kosovo. It's just a matter of political will?
That's our position, definitely, yeah.
And Germany is having a leading role in this?
Yes.
As I think you are in helping Kosovo get Council of Europe membership.
Indeed.
What are the chances of Kosovo getting there?
Well, there are discussions in several. The Council of Europe has a parliamentary assembly as well. It has institutions that where the governments are, and I know that also in the parliamentary assembly there are many members of parliament that are really supportive of this matter. And so I think there are chances. There are, of course, also there is some hesitation, particularly from non-recognizers. But I'm quite optimistic that this can happen. Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you about Bosnia in the end, because I know you've been engaged with Bosnia as well, and there's been quite a lot of talk about the latest decision of Mr. Schmidt about the election law. The Bosnian population feels segregated with that law. With that decision, is it something you support? The German government supports?
We fully support the High Representative, Mr. Schmidt, and I also would like to remind you that the first times that he used the bond powers in the lead up to the elections, that was really, really necessary, because if he wouldn't have mobilized the necessary funds for elections and passed the integrity law for elections, then I think it would have been very unlikely that these elections could have taken place. So we see in the political institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, unfortunately before the elections, we've seen a lot of stormates that blocked necessary decisions from being taken. And I think it's really, really, really important that now after the elections we have a government structure in Bosnia and Herzegovina that really allows for the necessary decisions to be taken. I think the citizens really deserve this. No, I mean, I went there before the summer break, and it was really. I mean, if you speak to young people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they want to stay there, but right now they don't know if they have a future in the country. So they need a government that is capable to act and to actually bring jobs, bring social development, bring reconciliation, and
do you think this will help? This decision will help?
Well, the important task now is for those that are elected now to bring up the reforms also on the way to EU the candidate status. No, I mean the EU has pointed out 14 priorities where Bosnia still needs to make important reforms when it comes to fighting corruption, increasing the rule of law, and that this is really decisions that the elected politicians of Bosnia and Herzegovina should take now. And
I know you've been vocal against Mr. Dodik, who is in the sanctions list of USA, and now there is a talk of maybe Mr. Schmidt might decide for the military sites in Republika Srpska who are in the property of the Federation to be given to Republika Srpska. Is it something that concerns you? Because they would be controlled then by someone that is backed from Russia, actually.
Well, the behavior of Mr. Dodik is really very problematic in the past years. All this talk about secession that doesn't really help in engaging for a constructive and peaceful future for the country. So we've made our position very clear. Germany is currently withholding funds also to Republika Srpska. We have been very vocal about sanctions as well that didn't find a majority in the European Union, and I really hope that also the civil society in Bosnia and Herzegovina really manages to overcome these tensions and find a way forward that is really respects the grievances and the right to a good future for all ethnic groups.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lührmann. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do të kemi pas pak me rubrikat tjera. Qëndrojmë. Dhe jemi kthyer më një herë me rubrika tjera sepse ajo ishte gjiruar të shtunën herët në mëngjes. Edhe jemi direkt nga Prishtina, të nderuar shikues, në prime time në Kanal 10, në Radio 10 99.4 dhe në Gazeta 10.com, natyrisht për t'i parë gjitha